Welcome to the corner of the internet that I talk about comic books. I'm Patrick, and I am a comic book creator, not a YouTuber. I find it very difficult to speak extemporaneously. I find it very difficult to pronounce extemporaneous. It's a struggle for me, and thank you for bearing with me. Before we get started, I wanted to thank anybody who has picked up Antioch. That is the trade collection of a series of Image that Marco Ferrari and I did. And it's just a great action-adventure superhero comic told with absolutely excellent art on Marco's part. Just really murdered that book. And we're proud of it, and thank you for picking it up if you have. If you haven't, there will be a link at least to Amazon and Comic Shop Locator in the description of this video. So, quickly moving on, I wanted to talk about Tilting at Windmills. That's a column that Brian Hibbs, a retailer from San Francisco, does. This is edition 296. We're one success away from saving comics. That's the premise and also the title. Brian Hibbs has been around for a long time. Some people hate him. Some people will tell you to disregard his opinion. Look, I don't think you got to agree with a guy to consider what he's saying, ever. This man's perspective is valid because he's experiencing a thing that I'm not. He's a retailer in a major city. That's a rarefied position. Most of us don't know anything about that. Even though San Francisco is different in many regards from a number of other cities, it still could be bellwether, and what affects him does affect the larger comic market, I think. He starts off with some throat clearing about culture war and how the woes of the comic book market are not the fault of something being woke. And I largely agree with that statement. I think that having to say it, for lack of a better word, is just cringe. I mean, the people that are sold on this being the case, or the people that are married to the idea that it's not, they're not changing their mind based on anything you say. And when you speak with the understanding that it won't change anyone's mind, it makes it look like you're doing it to cover your own ass. That's just how it appears. It appears that you're saying, well, I'm, just so we're clear, it's not about, the things that the bad people say. It's bad. It's just throat clearing. And I think it's not very helpful. I think it's also, in some regards, serves as a deflection, right? Because while I might agree with this man's statement that it does not have anything necessarily to do with woke, I do think that there is undoubtedly some connection between the quality of the books and sort of a general sensibility. I don't think we need to talk about agendas, and I don't think we need to talk about, the institutional capture or certain publishers being compromised. I don't think we need this dramatic language. It's just an idea here. Has the sensibility changed? Yeah, undoubtedly. Is that perhaps pushing away old readers? Provably. Yes, provably. So is it woke that's pushing readers out of comics? No, it's just the vibe. And you could argue that woke has something to do with that. Now, as I always say, if you are a very politically minded person who believes in the kind of woke values, and you think that inserting those values into these books or allowing creators to do so is more important than sales because of the larger social project that might be attached to that, that's perfectly fine. Like, I don't necessarily agree with that at all, but it is a perspective. And I think that we need to start acknowledging that you could think that and not be a lunatic. That is a position you could hold. You might have to defend it, because if things really do get bad, I think that this discourse that we've seen the last few years about woke comics hurting the industry, hurting the market, and I think that that's going to ramp up if things if things really do fall off a cliff in terms of sales. So you might have to defend it, but maybe you can. Like, if your values are such that, hey, I believe this is more important than anybody's livelihood, then stand on it. It's fine. I have very intense opinions about a number of things. You just got to stand on them sometimes. You got to say, yeah, this is what I believe. So moving on, he says, I believe our most current projects come down to the loss of institutional knowledge and short-term thinking on the publishing end, not what color or gender or sexuality a fictional character might be. Agreed. If we need an example of this, Captain America punching Hitler on the cover of a comic book in 1941, when the majority of Americans thought Hitler was a shithead that should get punched, is not politics, okay? It's an effort to sell a book. It's like if I put a character punching Putin on the cover of a comic book, that's political. It's not politics. It's very broad brush, almost idiotic effort at attention. I'm not even knocking it. I would do it. It's just not politics. Now, part of it is because if it's something that the majority of the readers agree on, I don't know. What'd you do? You challenged the status quo that day? No, you did not. And in 1941, yes, there was many Americans who did not want to be involved in a war, but the majority of Americans thought Hitler was a shithead. Okay to punch him on the cover of a fucking periodical. I think a better example of how challenging political perspectives and heterodox viewpoints can still sell is Grant Morrison's career. While the majority of Americans were totally okay with the idea of punching Hitler in 1941, the majority of Americans were not vegetarian or vegan or interested in animal rights or animal welfare in 1989. And Grant Morrison was infusing his titles with a lot of those values. So people were happily consuming a message that they don't necessarily agree with because it was expertly delivered. And maybe that's the conversation worth having is there's currently a tripod in the way, but if I could better read this article from Hibbs, I think he's very upfront about the fact that there is an enthusiasm issue here and readers are just not engaged with the books that are coming out. That is a very hard pill to swallow if you are the people that are putting these books out. And this is why this is going to be a very slow process. Because if you are an editor who is responsible for the hire of these creators that people are not excited about broadly, it reflects on your ability to do your job. And nobody likes to admit that they didn't do a good job. The editors are going to be slow to admit, or maybe perhaps never admit, that they made a poor decision in, let's not even say hiring. Let's not shit on people in this way. Let's say they made a poor decision in the books that they put creators on. It just didn't work. You know what I mean? Like, that's what we have to be honest about. I've done a number of things in my life that just didn't work. Still do them all the time. And you pivot or you iterate. You find things that can work out of something that doesn't. I get that it's tough when you have bosses who you fear would cut your throat. You have colleagues that you think may want your position. I understand it's hard to admit you're wrong. Sales numbers are looking bad. What do you say to the boss? Our comics aren't connecting, with a period at the end of that sentence? Or do you say, our comics aren't connecting, comma, because the readers are fucking stupid? I mean, most of us that want to save our jobs would probably go with the latter. We'd go with the excuse making. We'd go with the thing that indemnifies us in some way. And it's very difficult to blame somebody for doing that. We're going to have to eventually, but it's difficult, and I'm sympathetic. Hibbs goes on about how we need hits. We need to turn this around with a saga or a civil war or what have you. I've read this man's column often. This is very doom and gloom. He's talking about shops not surviving Q1, and look, he's just expressing a thing that everybody in this business knows. I get very frustrated when the commenterati of comics plays dumb, and they pretend that there is a discussion to be had about sales. It's not a state secret. There's plenty of people who know. You talk to them, they will tell you. And frankly, you don't even need to talk to them. All you need to see is stores are closing, people can't pay their bills. What else is there? Like, just for the sake of argument, where's all this money going? If it's not going to retailers, who are the people that sell the products, and it's not going to the creators, the people who make the products, is the suggestion here that the publishers are just fat cats who have made untold trillions while the working people suffer? I mean, it's a convincing enough premise, but it's just not the case. Sales are bad. Everybody knows that. Stop debating it. Debating it makes us look stupid. Things are bad. There's an enthusiasm problem. In a discussion today, I summed it up like this. When putting the best possible creators with proven track records and hype around them on Captain America sells 65,000 books, and putting the worst creators, putting the town drunk on art, and he's got the shaky hand, and putting the lady who runs the bottle return, who doesn't seem able to speak. If you put those two individuals on the same Captain America book that was selling 65 with great creators, it's going to sell 50 or 55. And that's a lot of books, obviously, but it's not a crazy amount of books. What's crazy is how many people continue to buy it regardless of the quality. So comic book publishers are not terribly motivated, at least in the way that I think markets should be, to create really exceptional work. There still has to be some passion in that office, and if there's not, or it's lacking, or whatever it is, you're not incentivized properly to make books really great. You are a pure bean counter. You might look at it and say, well, we don't need to make books great. We can reduce costs. And if they're going to continue to buy 55,000 of these things every month, then why don't we just make them as cheaply as possible? The bad art, writers who don't know their value, let's make them for next to nothing, and we'll increase profit that way. And I think on occasion, this is exactly the conversation that took place. Actually, I know that to be true. Here's the disastrous long-term effects of that. The addicts will continue to buy. Nobody new is coming in. So when you produce trash, the only sales are going to be to people who are hooked on trash. Nobody's coming in to get. Nobody new is saying, "Well, I heard this is trash. Can I get some? I'd like some of this trash I hear." It's just not happening. So that's the long-term deleterious effect of producing crap books. It may not hurt the bottom line up front. It may not. You might look at it and go, I mean, we're still selling it, right? I don't know. Let's put a dog on the next one. But it's hurting your future. It has hurt the present. So Hibbs is talking about how we have to change the narrative. The only way that that's going to happen is with a hit. Now, he is a believer that we have to go to fewer books sold to more people. Yeah, I guess. I have to advocate for myself here as a guy who doesn't have any hits under his belt. I need to still get stuff in the market, so I can't, out of self-interest, I can't advocate for his position, but it's not stupid. If we had 50 super high-quality books rather than 300 piles of shit, would that help the market? Would that buoy the industry? Would that get us out of our situation? Yeah, I think it would. Just, I mean, There's some problems, such as, are we willing to pay the people who can actually do great books? How long do we want to be reliant on them? Do we need new blood? How are they being introduced to the market? It's gonna take hitting a wall for the publishers to put their head down and say, yeah, all right, we fucked up. It's only the best books. It's only the best books until this thing's running smoothly. I think we're honestly much more likely to get the other political direction. I think we might get shocking material that is much more, Clinton era, Girls Gone Wild. I think that will be the strategy before best books possible. Best books possible is tough. I'm not trying to take anything away from the editors who do their jobs and all that, but they'd have to be doing their jobs at a much higher level. And finding talent that is ready to please a lot of people. You know how hard it is to please a lot of people? I do, because I fail at it all the time. It's fucking hard. And it is a talent. That populist streak that is absolutely necessary to sell a lot of something, even if it's accidental, and it often is. The best art, the best pop art, comes from an accidental populist underpinning. Because to be intentional would be to pander and to be obvious. Just it's a pile of shit. But when you create something that happens to have a universality to it, a shared experience that undergirds the entire endeavor, it hits. But you can't go into it trying to do that. You just have to swing and swing and swing. To do fewer books is to have less of a need for staff. And you can't ask staff to advocate against their own jobs. You can't ask editors to say, you know what, I'm not needed. I'm going to go tell my husband and kid that no Christmas this year, maybe no food, Fuck me, right? You can't ask people to do that. So I don't know how we fix this when we're currently so reliant on Marvel and DC, who are very slowly lumbering beasts who can't pivot in any real way and are filled with people who rightfully are advocating for their ability to make a living. So I'm obviously a big advocate for creator-owned and the indie comics space, but I don't know how we pick up the slack, because even something like Saga, which is always held up as a shop saver, as a locus for enthusiasm around comics, I'm sure I'm not taking anything away from Saga. I just think that Saga isn't just very high quality. It also has whatever the je ne sais quoi that you can't put your finger on, but is just there, right? Because there's books of equal quality to Saga. I mean, some people would argue not, but there's great stuff that gets ignored all the time. There's material of equal quality that just didn't bang in the same way, didn't hit the same heights. So we're going to keep swinging in the creator-owned space, and I'm trying to shift my gears to concepts that I think have broad appeal. I tend to, in my work, pursue really niche muses. I'm a guy who my whole life has liked the material that is not bizarre, just slightly left of the dial, slightly askew. And you can hit home runs doing that, but you got to swing many thousands of times. In some respects, I'm playing Major League Baseball with a stickball bat. It's harder to hit. Doesn't mean it can't happen. But we can continue to do our very best work with an effort at making at least the premise or the concept of these books something that could potentially reach people, and then see how our execution maybe manifests that into real success. But I'm sorry, I just think the big two have to shoulder this to a very large degree, at least the immediate turnaround of the market. And I don't know how we get out from under the slowness of the thing. I don't know how we get out from under the unresponsiveness of those offices. As Hibbs is saying, quarter one's going to be bad. Quarter two is going to be bad. I write. That is a skill-intensive but labor-light role. The artist has skill-intensive and labor-intensive role. It is really unfair of me to ask my partners on these books to enter a marketplace that I know our books will not sell as well as they would if we waited till mid-year or if we waited till 2025. I know that we have to continue to put out books. I know that we're going to have to take it on the chin a little bit and just roll the dice. But it's really hard, man. It's hard to ask somebody who you know broke their ass to sell fewer books of stuff, to go largely unseen because the entire market is depressed. I think that we're going to see a lot of independent creators create their own. I think we're going to see some of those people take jobs in design, take video game gigs, and wait out the market. And I don't think we can. I think that some of the big boys are going to have to continue to put out work, even if it's painful. I don't know. This video's gone long. I guess thanks to Brian Hibbs for giving me something to expound on. He's not wrong. We need hits. I just don't know how you arrive at a civil war, given the sensibilities of the creators that they've installed, and given the maybe inflexibility of some of the editors. I just don't know. I would be happy to hear your suggestions in the comment section. Just keep it polite. One thing we're not doing at this channel is attacking working people. Yes, some people need to move on. Yes, some people are better equipped for their positions than others. But keep it polite in the comments. Give me advice. I can't affect any change at the big two, but maybe some of those people watch this. So lay it on us. Tell us what you think. Your suggestion is as good as anybody else's.